Hi beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emma May. If this is your first time stopping by this channel, you're very much welcome. And to all my returning subscribers, thank you so much for being here. So this video contains the sewing tutorial for the making of this beautiful overbust corset with a separate bustier. In my previous video, I shared the cutting, the pattern drafting and the cutting tutorial, and here I'm just going to show you how I sewed everything down. It came out looking so beautiful. Without wasting much time, let's get right into the video. So I already have my patterns cut out, so please make reference to the cutting video. I will leave the link in the description to that video. So these are the fabrics I'll be using: a crepe, Ankara and satin fabric. So the satin is going to be for the lining. So I had gone ahead to already cut out the pieces. I cut out 2 for each piece. So I left about 0.75 inches on the side to join it together. So I need that much allowance because I'll be using it for my boning channels. And then on the side, I added about 1.5 inches to the side for my seam allowance. And now for the back as well, I did the same thing. For the 2 pieces of the back, I added 0.75 inches to join the sides together, and then 1.5 inches for seam allowance. Now for the bustier part, I went ahead to also cut the bustier. So for the middle part of the bustier, I cut it on a fold as one piece, and then I cut the sides as 2 separate pieces. So I also cut out lining pieces for the bustier. Now I'm going to be using this interfacing to iron on all the fabrics I have cut out, every piece. So this is it after I was done ironing, and this is the front piece or the front pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and just join everything together, all the sides. So I had pinned down one side. I'm just trying to show you how to join it down. So please, when you're cutting from your pattern paper, do well to make some notches so you know which part is going to which part to avoid confusion. Now I did the same thing for the back as well. For the bustier now, I'm going to be ironing wording on it to give it that padding in the bust area. You can go ahead and use your bra cup at this point. So sorry, the video is a bit fast. So at this point, I had sewed down everything and I ironed open my seams. See how the seam allowance is looking large. So this is what I want to do to pass my boning through there. Instead of running extra boning channels, I will still add some more boning channels, but at least let me make use of the seam allowance for my boning as well. So for the back, I did the same thing for the back. So for the bustier, I had sewn down the wording on it. I had joined it. I ironed the wording on the separate pieces, and then I sewed it down. So now I'm going to just make notches to enable me open up that bust point area and give it a very good press. So that's what I'm just going to be doing now, ironing it down. I'll also use my bust ham to accentuate the curves and everything. So now after I'm done ironing, I'll just take it to the machine and sew the lining on it. So I'm placing a right size fitting to sew it all around, and I'll leave a little space at the lower part so that I can turn it inside when I'm done sewing. So after sewing it down, this is it. This is the space I had left at the lower part. So before I turn it inside, I'll just make some notches all around, and then I'll go ahead and turn it inside, and I'm going to go ahead and also give it a very good press. So while I'm ironing everything down, I'm going to be using some hemming gum to just make those sharp edges lay flat. So for the main fabric and the lining piece to just lay flat on each other, and to bring out the little design on the front part there, I'm just going to use hemming gum to just lay flat. It's advisable that you sew your hemming gum while you're joining the lining and the main fabric. You sew down your hemming gum on there. It is going to make everything very easy and better for you, but I'm just going to iron mine down here. So I'm putting it through the hole I left at the lower part, through that space, and I iron it down. I also use my bust ham to just make everything come out rounded and nice. So this is it for the bustier. I'll take it to my machine and just sew down that point, and that is all for that part. So now for the rest of the top, I'm just going to sew down those boning channels to make that space. So I'm going to leave a small distance that will be enough for my bones to pass through, and I'll just sew it down. So these are the back pieces. So for the back, I have 2 channels for each piece of the back, and then for the front, see how the front fabric is looking so stressed. I went ahead to run some more boning channels on the side and in the middle part, and then at the top. So I think for the front in general, I have about 12 to 16 boning channels or so. So the boning channel I sewed at the top there is just to give it that structured look on the bust area. So here I'm just showing you how I'll be attaching the boning inside the channel. So I'll put it in, and then I would leave a distance, a space of about 0.5 inches so that I can hem the lower part, because this is an unsewable boning that I am using here. So I'm just using fire to just make the edge a bit rounded and less sharp, so that when I put it on, it will be comfortable for me. So I'll just do the same thing I've done here for the rest of the channels. So when I was done inserting all the bones, this is how it came out looking on the front. I also went ahead to insert bones on the back pieces as well. So now I'm going to be doing a fabric placement. In my previous video, I told you the guys that I was going to do a fabric placement with this, and this is the crepe fabric I'm going to be using. I ran these lines on them. I sewed down these small lines, and in my previous video, I showed a bit of how I did that. So here I'm going to just place the crepe fabric down, and then I'll place the satin, which is a lining piece, on it, and I'll use pins to just pin it down. So I decided to insert the bones through those channels first, because I need the entire stretch and the entire shape of the satin, of the lining piece, because that's what actually carries my whole measurement and carries the whole shape of this top. So I decided to fix those bones first. So now I'm just going to place it down and make sure I pin everywhere while stretching the crepe. So the satin is already very stretched, so this crepe fabric has to also have that full stretch to just make up for everything, so it will not be looking funny by the time I sew everything down. So here I'm just trying to get that shape and everything. I will just pin everything down. So if you have a dress form, it is better to use a dress form for this, or better still, you can use your client or the person that has the outfit. You can use the person's body to do this fabric placement. So this method I'm just using a table. So it actually worked, but it's advisable to do the ones that are better. So here I'm just going to cut out following the entire shape of the satin fabric, and then I'll take out the pins and see how it is looking. So here I was done taking out the pins, and it actually came out looking the same except for that neck swoop area, that bust line point. So it did not really come out having the same curve, but it still worked. So I'm just going to take it to my machine now and sew down, just to turn it inside out, like you're turning your lining with your main fabric. So I'm just going to sew the neck part and the sides together, and then this is it on my machine, just sewing it down. And I'll leave some space at the side to turn it inside out. So it is better you leave the space at the lower part so that you can use a bias or something to turn it, to hem it when you're done sewing. So I eventually did that later, but for now I just left that space on the side. So I'm just trying to iron it down so that it will be easier to work with. And now for the back pieces, I also cut out the same crepe, but I didn't do like a fabric placement. I just placed it. The back is more straight than the front, so and it has two pieces. So I just cut a bit of the crepe fabric. So the part I had run the lines was not enough to take the whole back, so I used some of the plain fabric, the same crepe, but the ones I had not run those lines on. So I just did like a cut and join with the crepe at this point, and then after joining it together, I also joined it with the satin fabric, and now I'm making notches all around so that I can turn it in. So this is it. This is me just turning it inside, and then I'll just go ahead and iron it down nicely. So after ironing everything out, this is it. I also went ahead to run some boning lines close to where I'm going to be putting my eyelets. So beside the point I'll be putting my eyelets. So I'm just trying to mark out here to make it clearer. So I ran two more boning channels side by side where I'm going to be inserting my eyelets so that it will make it structured. And the bias I showed there is for the ropes, for the eyelet ropes. So that's what I'll be using to make the ropes to pass through the eyelets. So now here I'm done with the front and the back, so I'm just going to join the sides together. So you can see for the front, I went ahead to sew down the side I had left open, and I ripped the seam off from the lower part so that when I'm done, everything is just going to be neat inside. So I'm just attaching the back to the front pieces with a pin, and then I'll take it to my machine and sew it. I'm not taking any body measurements here because this is already smaller than me, because you know it's a corset and it has eyelet ropes and eyelet loops behind, so it is not going to take any measurements. I'm just going to sew it down by maybe 1 inch or 0.75 inches. So here I'm just attaching the other side and using a pin to just secure it down and take to my machine. So after joining the sides together, I'm going to use like a bias to turn the lower part. So a normal bias is going to be too small for this. So I just cut out the fabric, the main fabric I used. I cut out about 1 inch. So I'm just going to use it to turn it in on the lower part, just like you're turning a bias, right? So this is it when I was done. It came out looking so nice already, and then I'll just go ahead and iron everything down before I put my beads. So I ironed it down first before I put. So I'm just going to use these beads to just give it that aesthetic look that the inspiration has. Not exactly as it is, but you know, this is what I was able to come up with. This was how I fixed mine, and everything inside was looking neat, outside was looking neat as well. And then I'll go ahead and attach the bustier to this. So for this bustier part, I'm going to be using hand needle and thread. Those of you that don't like sewing with your hands, you can go ahead and use your machine to just tack it, but me, I decided to use my hand needle to sew this down. So I'm just placing the little armhole parts together, and then I'll just arrange it with the measurement I had taken already, and then making sure the bust point of the bustier is where that swoop is on the main corset. So I'm just going to pin it down so that it will just be straight and aligned. So I'll use my needle now to just tack it little by little at different points so that it can be in place. So you can use a fabric glue to do this, but I decided to use my hand needle. So now for the straps, I went ahead to cut about 2 inches in width with about 16 inches in length. So I cut about 6 pieces of this to make those straps. So I just sewed it, leaving like a space in the middle so that I can pass my bones through there. So it's these bones that are making the strap look structured. So I'm just going to pass the bones through there and then leave a little space at the lower part so that I can use my needle to attach it to the main corset top. So I'll just go ahead and insert the bones through the rest of the straps, and this is it after I was done. So now I would attach it to the body of the top. So one end of the strap would be attached to the little armhole part there on the front part of the corset, and the other end will be attached to the back part of the corset, very close to the side seam, so very close to that front armhole. So it's as if they're trying to make a circle and almost meeting at the same point. So that is how I'm just going to be sewing it down. So I'm just showing you how it's going to look. I used some pins to just hold it in place. So I'll be putting 3 on each side. So 3 straps on one side and 3 straps on the other side, and I'll use my hand needle to just sew it down. You can use your machine to do this, but I prefer using my hand needle to just make some little tacking there. So this is it after I've attached it, and we're like 95% done with this. So I'm going to bring in the bias I had used to make the ropes for the lacing, and I'll just go ahead and lace everything down nicely through the corset loops at the back of the corset. So this is just it. This is everything for this top. For a first timer in anything related to corset making, I mean, this is my first time making a corset, and I really tried. I must say, I really tried. So please, if you've watched up to this point, if you found this video helpful, if you liked this video, please do well to give it a thumbs up. Also share and subscribe to my channel, because I post beautiful tutorials on here. So this is how it looks on me. It came out looking very beautiful. Thank you so much. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.